Ahsoka episodes 1 and 2 have dropped, and I want to give kudos to Disney Plus for doing something right. The episodes dropped at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific time, and that to me is great. Staying up till 3 a.m. for a lot of people is just not feasible. I do it sometimes, as many of you know, but it's much easier to watch it during prime time most nights, or at least closer to before it's the middle of the night. So I got to give them credit for that. This show is following the story of Ahsoka Tano, and I want to say first and foremost that many of you might be wondering, do you have to watch Rebels? Do you have to watch Clone War? Do you have to watch the previous shows to get into this one? The previous shows, especially Star Wars Rebels, helps establish the relationships of these characters to Ahsoka and to themselves. So if you watch that show, you're going to be rewarded with Easter eggs, and you're going to have an understanding of the backstory and the relationships between them. If you don't watch the show, yes, you can still watch Ahsoka, and maybe if you like it, you can eventually go in and watch Rebels and catch up. Clone Wars is mostly about a younger Ahsoka, and her being under Anakin Skywalker. So these are things that are directly referenced in Ahsoka, and they're things that Star Wars fans of those shows already know. It's just you don't have to necessarily watch those to understand what's going on here when it comes to the story of this show. Same thing with that one episode of Boba Fett and the Mandalorian stuff. The Mandalorian episode with Ahsoka from season 2 helped establish that she was looking for Grand Admiral Thrawn, which is the plot of this show, but it's not, again, something that is a must-see, but it does help if you've seen those things. So please understand that. It's no different than starting Star Wars with one of the later, like starting with Empire and not the original Star Wars A New Hope. Now, speaking of Star Wars movies, this is the first Disney Plus show to have an opening crawl. And that made me smile. It tickled me because it's not the same opening crawl as in the movies. It's a red-lettered opening crawl going straight up with different music. But I'm so glad it did that because it helped catch everybody up on the opening sequence of this, which was the Dark Jedi freeing a captured Imperial prisoner that was on her way to go to trial in the New Republic. And the story kind of starts there, and we actually see the opening sequence. So you're going to get lightsaber action right from the get-go, and that made me smile because, as you know, I've said it a million times, as much as I love the Star Wars underworld, I love lightsabers, I love the Jedi and Sith lore, the Dark Jedi, and it's established here that these are indeed villains, and they're not on the side of good. And they are definitely skilled in the ways of the Force because we see them utilize their powers both with lightsabers and with the Force to do what they got to do, slice and dice. There was even a part in this first episode that kind of mirrored the finale of Rogue One when Vader's going through the hallway. You see this. Like, you see Balin, played by the late, great Ray Stevenson, and his apprentice Shin Hati, slicing people up to save Morgan, who is basically an Imperial magistrate. And off we go with the story. This first episode, I'm going to discuss the first episode, and the second one is directed by Dave Filoni. Both episodes were written by Dave Filoni, and the second episode is directed by Steph Green. Not Seth Green, Steph Green, which is somebody who worked on Watchmen 2019, the TV show, and the Book of Boba Fett, which I know a lot of folks don't like, but the writing material here is all Filoni. And if you know anything about Filoni, yes, he loves Ahsoka. He does love that character, but he is the apprentice of George Lucas, and he is the kind of the real heir to Star Wars, or at least somebody who should be. He always connects his things, and there's a lot of that here. This first episode is called Master and Apprentice. The first scene with Ahsoka, I loved it. I love Dave Filoni's style. Like, he really has figured out how to direct this stuff really, really well. The music, everything's just, and that wasn't him doing it, but he obviously everything goes through him. Came out so beautiful here. It's sort of like like they're doing a tribute to Indiana Jones, but in space, and I like that. And so Ahsoka gets this like artifact, and then she's confronted by these 3 combat droids, and away we go. He's not holding back on the combat or on the action early in the episode. And that's good. It's a good thing to get people hooked to see where it goes next, even if it means doing some action right at the start. So we're introduced to Ahsoka's, I guess, sidekick droid, and she talks about this map, which was discussed in the opening crawl, and how the map may have some. I guess the way they discussed it was like some kind of importance. Now, I don't believe this is the same map to Exegol, like that. In fact, I know it's not because the map to Exegol was in a Sith holocron wayfinder, they called it, and there's only two of them, so it's not that map, and it's not the map to Luke. This is a whole other map. So we're seeing the map story, the map idea being used again, but I'm not going to crap on it because I fully understand that the galaxy has maps because stars are so much more complex than, just a regular, like, Earth map. So it's not something that's that bad of an idea when you think about it. It's just that the sequel trilogy movies utilized it in kind of a weird way. Even though I get why they did it the way they did it, even though there's some weird stuff there, it doesn't matter. The idea of a map is not inherently a bad thing. When Ahsoka reunites with Hera at the New Republic, we find out that the star map that she got is a map to Grand Admiral Thrawn, and that he's the last Grand Admiral of the Empire who they have not found yet. So at this point in the timeline, New Republic's already taken out most of the Imperial remnant. He is, of course, one of the important people, the last Grand Admiral, and this has been her quest for quite some time, and the map will take her there. One of the cool things that we saw here is they go to Lothal, and they're giving like a celebration, like a monument for the anniversary of the Rebels saving Lothal, which was like, I think it was the series finale the series finale of Rebels, and they're, kind of giving tribute to Ezra, and Sabine is there, but she's not there. The leader there calls for her, but she's not there. Now, one thing that I found awesome is that Clancy Brown is playing the leader. Clancy Brown's one of my favorite actors. Like, he's been in so many movies that I love and so many things that I love. He was in SpongeBob as well. Like, I'm sure you'll recognize him, well, maybe not visually, but immediately I was like, is that Clancy Brown? I was very happy to see him. We find Sabine on a speeder bike running away from the ceremony, and they have these two, I guess, New Republic agents from Lothal trying to go after her. It's a really funny scene, very Fast and Furious-ish, them trying to stop her. It's good stuff. The way that Filoni's introducing these characters to live action, reintroducing them to the world is pretty cool. So we see the Dark Jedi apparently hunting down Ahsoka because obviously that's the one. And we have a mention of the Night Sisters. So again, this is context. I'm not going to go into it here, but this is context that you get more of in the Filoni animated shows. So it's not necessary, like, super important to know, but the lore and the backstory has already been explained in the other Filoni projects prior to this one. So that's why it helps to know everything, because he will be throwing references at you. Morgan Isbeth is a descendant of the Night Sisters, and they're still hunting down Ahsoka. That's what they want to do and get that map. Sabine's whole thing is that she's distraught and upset because of Ezra disappearing, and she obviously had a lot of emotions, a lot of feelings for him. And then Ahsoka shows up and she's like, hey, I know how to find him. So of course that's going to bring her right back into the adventure. So the droid that she's with determines by scanning the lightsabers from the hologram camera footage or whatever, that determines, because he was in the Jedi Temple helping the younglings construct lightsabers, that one of the lightsabers he's never seen before, which is obviously the apprentice, but Baylan, he does know Baylan. And according to him, Baylan was a Jedi, trained in the temple, classic style, who disappeared after the Order 66, story, and he's still out there. But now he's become a mercenary and a dark side user. So episode 1 ends with a lightsaber duel between Sabine and Shin Hati, who catches up to them. And it's a pretty good little fight. It's not like, too over the top, but for the first episode, it's a good little fight. Is this the first fight in live action Star Wars between two female Force users, like the first lightsaber duel? It might actually be. And I don't think that's wokeness. I really don't, because Filoni has made Ahsoka a strong character. I don't think they're doing that on purpose to be woke, even though it is Kathy Kennedy Star Wars. Maybe in the back of Filoni's mind, he's like, let me just throw this in to make her happy. I don't think that's what this is. It's just a fight between two apprentices who don't have their masters there. And Ahsoka's on her way there, but the episode cliffhanger, the first episode ends with what appears to be Sabine getting impaled and them losing the map to Thrawn. So that's the cliffhanger. I want to say before I go on to episode 2, really liked episode 1. I'm not going to go into plot by plot what happens in episode 2. Here I went over a lot of the scenes I liked, but I'm going to give you more of an overarching review. But I want to say that this first episode was a great way to introduce the Rebels characters to live action so far. We don't have them all there yet. And it was very entertaining. I wasn't bored at all. I was into the story. And so far, this is my favorite season premiere since Mandalorian Season 2, with the appearance of Boba Fett at the end. That was phenomenal. Enjoyed that season premiere. This, to me, was better than Obi-Wan and better than Mandalorian Season 3 and better than Boba Fett. So I think I might like this show. I think so far I might enjoy the show because I do love those Rebels characters. I'm digging, the villains. And I do want to also say that Ray Stevenson, at the end, they showed a graphic for our friend Ray because he did die, like, after shooting the show, but before the episode came out. And it's unfortunate because he does a pretty good job for the few scenes he had here. He's still going to be around because, he's in more episodes, obviously. But seeing that graphic, though, was really a nice touch. Now, episode 2. We find out that Sabine is not dead at the beginning of episode 2. She's in the medical bay. She wakes up. Ahsoka's there. And she is told that Sabine tells her she unlocked the map, but it was taken from her. So I knew Sabine wasn't going to really die because she's like the secondary main character in this show besides Ahsoka. So that wasn't that dramatic for me, but it was still a good cliffhanger. I'm not going to hate him for trying, and it is a good way to kind of end that first episode because then you're wondering, well, wait a minute, are they, what's happening here? So there you go. So now this game of cat and mouse flips because now Ahsoka has to go hunt them down for the map. Episode 2 is called Toil and Trouble. Now, with episode 2, there was a couple of plot threads. Like, the story really started to go to move forward. The first sort of character arc was Sabine struggling with her relationship with Ahsoka, being her apprentice. And by the end of the episode, she redonned her Mandalorian armor, cutting off her hair, and wanting to resume her training with Ahsoka. So that's a great moment for Rebels fans that we're going to get a continuation of that. Obviously, she still misses Ezra. That might become a story later on. Hopefully it will be. But I think that's a good thing for her. Meanwhile, Ahsoka is on the lookout to see where these Dark Jedi went to. And it's almost implied, if not stated, that, well, it's not really stated. It's mostly implied that Morgan Elsbeth, being the, basically being the descendant of the Night Sisters, that she's the real, like, dark villain here. That even though, Balin and his apprentice, they're, the workhorses, she's almost the one that's plotting. And so we find out, and this is some tremendous lore building, that this map that they found to try to get their hands on the location of Grand Admiral Thrawn is actually somewhere outside the galaxy. Now, they don't specifically say unknown regions. It's almost like implied that that Thrawn is literally in another galaxy, which is, in theory, further away from the unknown regions. Now, obviously that remains to be seen because there's context clues here. The fact that Morgan describes this ancient place, because quickly, like when they first get to this like sort of temple area, Balin's like, the Jedi didn't build this, nor was it the Sith. It was, because it's old, it was a different civilization from another galaxy. Now that right there has my mouth watering when it comes to lore, because never before in Star Wars has there really been a discussion of other galaxies. The conflict, the story takes place in what they call the galaxy. But if there's other galaxies out there that have older civilizations than what we see in Star Wars, that in itself could be interesting. That in itself could be not just world building, we're talking about universe building, literally in this case. And that to me is really interesting. Also, the other plot thread is this idea of people who may still be loyal to the Empire. They go to this shipyard and they find out there's a top secret project being worked on for a giant like battleship. They've been decommissioning parts from old Star Destroyers to make new ships, but the New Republic isn't really asking for these things. So they come to find out that there's people who are still loyal to the Empire, and there's another really good lightsaber duel in this episode. I don't know if every episode will have lightsaber duels. I feel like the first two may be doing them purposely to get people sort of hooked and acclimated to it, but I love it. It's again the Jedi Sith stuff, the stuff with the Force, the lore, the Night Sisters. This is my favorite aspect of Star Wars, and it's literally right here being given to us finally. You understand what I'm saying? It really is. The characters themselves, although there does require to be a little bit of context from Rebels, even if you've never seen it, like I said earlier, you can pick up on these things, as you watch. So there's an ominous sort of final scene here where Balin senses that Ahsoka is very determined to find Thrawn and probably kill him. Let's keep it real. He's the last one, but he's hidden away for a reason. Obviously, with the idea being that at some point he will return to the galaxy and invade. Now, is the big ship that was being built, is that for Thrawn? Is that for the First Order? Like, we don't know, obviously, yet. But it's almost implied that at some point Thrawn will enter the galaxy and we'll have a new war, which could end up being what happens in the next movie, the Dave Filoni movie, in which case I'm hoping we see Mark Hamill play Luke Skywalker again, because having a scene on screen of young Luke in his prime with Ahsoka, and maybe even Sabine there, maybe even Mando there with Grogu, like there's so much potential for a tremendously epic crossover that even though it won't erase the sequel trilogy, I think if people see Luke in his prime having a real war and taking down Thrawn or helping take down Thrawn, people will definitely feel a lot better about the future of Star Wars. The bottom line is this, ladies and gentlemen. Dave Filoni, he's not perfect. He has his flaws. He has said some cringe things in the past here and there, but here we have somebody who cares about the property, who cares about the lore, who understands what Star Wars fans want. This is the guy who needs to be the leader of Star Wars. Kathy Kennedy, obviously, is the figurehead leader within Lucasfilm, but what I mean is moving her aside, whoever takes that job, that's not what I'm talking about. Creatively, the creative force behind Star Wars has to be Filoni. Favreau could be in there as well because he's a great creator too, but Filoni's the guy, man. Filoni is that dude. That is the guy who needs to be in charge of this, because there's so many ideas here that are thrown in, like this ancient sort of pathway leading out of the galaxy. There's so many cool things that just have my mouth watering, dude. Like, I want Filoni in charge of this forever. Forever. I was looking forward to it, and I was very pleased with the first 2 episodes of Ahsoka. Fantastic show. Tremendous lore, world building, just absolutely phenomenal. Loved it very much. What did you think? Let me know down below, because I loved it. I loved it. I cannot wait to see more. Take care, and I'll see y'all in the next video. I'm sure there'll be more to talk about in the future with this show, but I'll see y'all down below.